Scrappers are one of my favorite archetypes in City of Heroes, and a classic, as it is one of the first 5 archetypes in City of Heroes. It could do the most melee damage, and while it may not be the most tanky, it still has some survivability to keep it alive. Today, I'm going to be exploring the Scrapper archetype. I am going to go in depth with some of the concepts, meaning the casual player may come across information in this video of which they may have not known before. When it comes to choosing your primary, it is important to know how that power set interacts with the Scrapper's inherent ability, as well as how the damage is calculated. The Scrapper's inherent ability is Critical Strike, which gives the player the chance to do double damage, and will have a 5% chance to deal double damage to minions, pets, and other players, while higher ranking enemies, such as lieutenants, bosses, etc., will have a 10% chance to Critical Strike. These Critical Strike chances can be increased in a couple of different ways. It will depend on the power you are using, and if you choose to use archetype origin enhancements. Starting with certain power choices, some powers will have an increased chance to deal double damage automatically. A couple of examples are the Claw's Eviscerate power or the Martial Arts Eagle Claw power. Comparing Shockwave to Eviscerate, we can see Shockwave has a 5% chance to crit on minions and other players, and 10% chance for higher ranking enemies, while Eviscerate has a 15% chance to crit for both minions and higher ranking enemies. Other than just powers, we also need to take into account archetype origin enhancements, otherwise known as ATOs, which are unique enhancements, meaning you cannot have more than one of them, are also attuned, meaning it's scalable with level, and as the name implies, are only usable by your archetype. The Scrapper ATOs are specifically designed to increase the chance of landing a critical strike. The Scrapper Strike ATO will give you a passive 2% critical strike chance to minions and 4% to higher ranking enemies. An upgraded version of that, the Superior Strikes ATO, which can be upgraded through enhancement catalysts, will give you a passive 3% to critical strike chance to minions and 6% critical strike chance to higher ranking enemies. The Critical Strikes ATO will give you a proc of 50% critical strike chance for 30.25 seconds. The proc per minute, or PPM for short, of the normal Critical Strikes enhancement is 2, while the Superior Critical Strikes version is 4 PPM, meaning this will proc 4 times per minute. While these may be the only ways to increase your critical strike chance, what is also important is increasing the overall damage dealt. Scrappers have the highest base melee damage in the game, and scales to 1.125 on the damage scale list. This is higher than Stalker's base of 1 and the Brute's base of 0.75. While this may be true, I should also mention that Brutes before level 21 can do more damage than Scrappers, as their maximum damage is set to 775 from level 1 to 50, as opposed to Scrappers' 210% damage before level 21. After level 21, Scrapper's maximum damage is no longer handicapped and can reach up to 500%. Assuming we are comparing maximums, Scrappers will edge out above Brutes without any ATOs, and the gap becomes wider with ATOs as detailed in this Reddit post linked in the description by Lunar Nimbus. He also points out that due to base damage scaling with critical strikes, it is worth going for power sets that have build-ups that last longer, such as Claws, Dual Blades, and Dark Melee. Surprisingly, one power set he did not add was Kinetic Melee as one of the power sets listed, considering a critical strike with concentrated strike will reset that power set's build-up. Besides taking into account damage, it might also be worth taking into account secondary effects that are applied to your powers, or understanding why a particular power set is unique. For example, whether or not the set gives defense, which is the same as the chance to dodge incoming attacks. Broadsword, Katana, and Staff Fighting will give lethal and melee defense, and Titan weapons will give smashing and melee defense. These sets have a specific power that grants those defenses. If looking for a power set that gives overall defense, Dark Melee applies minus to hit to enemies, which when applied to enemies gives the player defense. Because minus to hit and defense work in the same way, the more minus to hit applied to an enemy, the more defense the player gains. Street Justice, Staff Fighting, Titan Weapons, Savage Melee, and Psionic Melee are builders and spenders, meaning the player will generate a resource and spend that resource on a big attack that does a lot of damage. Dual Blades has a unique combo system that's much more complex than the builder and spender system, and because of that, it may turn players off. Spines and Radiation Melee have a dot damage over time toggle that allows for passive AoE damage or area of effect damage. These sets have a decent AoE on top of a dot toggle, making these sets popular to farmers, though most farmers play Brute due to Scrappers not naturally having taunt and generally being less survivable. One more thing to take into account when choosing your primary is the damage typing. Being so Smashing and Lethal are most commonly resisted, it may do less damage to enemies overall. If this is one of your concerns, then go for a power set with a more unique typing such as Fire, Cold, Energy, Negative, Psionic, and Toxic. I cannot cover all the secondary effects like Disorient, Knockback, minus defense, minus speed, etc. This is because it would take a long time to mention them all, but the idea is to inform you that these secondary effects can increase survivability or damage output, and that each power set has its own unique way in which it plays. When choosing a secondary, it's worth taking into account where the Scrapper's strengths lie, and how these power set choices compare to other archetypes. For example, it's not worth taking a damage resistance or reduced damage received based power set like Fiery Aura, Radiation Armor, Electric Armor, and to a lesser extent Invulnerability, when taking into account that the Scrapper's damage resistance is set to 75% when in comparison to the Tanker's and Brute's 90% damage resistance. In other words, the Scrapper cannot make full use of these 4 power sets, though that's not to get confused with power sets with resistance in them. Some resistance is good, but if the set is dedicated to it, then that set might likely be better on a Brute or a Tanker. Defense is a must for pretty much all archetypes and builds, and this applies to Scrappers. Super Reflexes and Shield defenses are good choices as they apply positional defenses, or defenses that apply to all melee, ranged, or area of effect attacks. It's pretty easy to reach 45% defense, which is considered the soft cap, or the point where more defense does not make a difference. These sets also give decent resistances too. What distinguishes the two is Super Reflexes gives more defense debuff and generally is easier to reach soft cap, while shield defenses provide more damage overall. Also worth mentioning is that Bio Armor, Dark Armor, and Willpower all give the opportunity to get high specific defense, i.e. Smashing, Lethal, Fire, Cold, etc., and decent resistance. These 3 sets are distinguished from Bio Armor's flexibility with its different adaptations that allow you to either be more endurance efficient, do more damage, or be more defensive. Dark Armor has additional debuffs like Fear and Stun, but also has high endurance use, and Willpower can get high regeneration with its rise to the challenge. Speaking of regenerations, Stalker and Scrappers can receive up to 3000% regen in comparison to the Brutes and Tankers' 2500%. In other words, if trying to reach the max regen on a particular character, the power set Regeneration gives an opportunity with its instant healing. One thing I haven't mentioned so far, but should mention, is whether or not the power set has taunt. Unlike Brute and Tanker, which can taunt automatically, Scrappers have to select a power set that has taunt built into it if they want to taunt. Brutes and Tankers have the natural ability to draw aggro with taunt, while Scrappers have to rely on Taunt Aura built into select power sets. The power sets that have Taunt Aura built into them are Willpower, Shields, Defenses, Radiation Armor, and Bio Armor. Lastly, damage is also important to Scrappers, so the ones that give damage bonuses are Shield Defenses, Bio Armor, Radiation Armor, and Fiery Aura. Thank you for watching the video. I just wanted to say that while some sets are better suited for Scrappers, this game, to many players, is not about min-maxing, and the power set choices does not matter too much to most players. Thank you City of Heroes Wiki and Paragon Wiki. They had a lot of useful information. A special thanks to Lunar Nimbus for the Reddit post about the differences between Scrappers and Brutes.